The Mandalorian is back to distract us from the horrors of 2020, but we still want more, and that's why we think that there are a number of characters from the show that deserve their own spin-off, perhaps even more than a certain someone. So Mandalorian is back, but as we mentioned, we are greedier than Jabba the Hutt at an all-you-can-eat buffet. We just want more. This is partly due to the weekly episodic release, which has left many a cliffhanger and tease, such as the return of Temuera Morrison to the Star Wars franchise. Now, while he hasn't explicitly come out and said, "I'm Boba Fett," the general consensus is that Boba is indeed who he is playing, and there have even been reports that a Boba Fett solo show will be released before Season 3 of The Mandalorian. This is all well and good, but is he the most deserving? We'll take a look at some Mandalorian characters past, present, and future who we think are arguably more deserving, and some who aren't, including action heroes from the novels, impending characters from the animated shows, and some notable cameos.
This is the way.
To some awesome Mando-related content. Now, one of the arguable reasons Boba may not be deserving of his own spin-off is that he doesn't exactly have many redeeming qualities, and unless he goes through some sort of redemptive arc, it is probably to be assumed that he will remain a character with questionable morality. Now, while Din Djarin isn't exactly a saint, he definitely has more going for him than Boba. And plus, Boba doesn't even have his own lovable sidekick. But say there was a more heroic and chivalrous character with glorious hair that also wears the armor of Boba, maybe they would be better suited for their own spin-off show. Well, good thing that there is such a character. Cobb Vanth, aka the Marshal.
We gonna do this in front of the kid?
You've seen worse.
Despite being in only one episode so far, Vanth oozed charm and swagger and quickly stole the show early on, which Din is kind of used to as he is constantly upstaged by one certain wrinkled green fella. Vanth also has an interesting backstory, which was shown in Chapter 9, and it would be interesting to see his story either between the events of Return of the Jedi and The Mandalorian at length, or his events post-Mando. There is certainly enough material to go off of, seeing as he is a prominent fixture in the novels, and a Vanth spin-off show could be familiar enough to appeal to current fans, but also provide an arguably grittier tone. Vanth's popularity is certainly helped by the performance provided by Timothy Olyphant, who has a gunslinger's pedigree being in shows such as Deadwood and Justified, and would be a perfect homage back to the world of westerns that inspired the original saga. Plus, just look at that hair. It didn't even get slightly messed up under Boba's helmet. Now that is something special. Come on, Disney, we need more of that hair. But if Disney wanted to move away from the overcrowded gunslinger route, they could opt to go with an imminent new face in Season 2, Ahsoka Tano. Tano's introduction to The Mandalorian has been a terribly kept secret, and it's just a case of when rather than if we see the character. Ahsoka has been a fan favorite since her introduction in the Clone Wars series, and she certainly has the strength, popularity, and star power with Rosario Dawson cast for the role. Having an Ahsoka spin-off would fit in with Disney's strong female protagonist criteria, and her extreme popularity will certainly draw a huge audience in. Plus, she's just plain awesome. That should be a reason on its own. The show could follow Ahsoka's time from the end of the Rebels to her introduction into The Mandalorian, a question which fans have pondered for a while now. Another Clone Wars and Rebels character that will make their appearance in The Mandalorian is Bo-Katan Kryze, with Katie Sackhoff reprising the role. This makes sense, seeing as she has a strong connection with one of the show's biggest reveals, the Darksaber. The Darksaber is certainly going to play a big part of Season 2 and beyond, so by having a show focused on Bo-Katan, and potentially Ahsoka Tano, and maybe even Sabine Wren, they could explain how exactly the saber ends up in the hands of Gideon and bridge the gap between the animated shows and the live-action ones. Giving Bo-Katan some more screen time is certainly not a bad thing either, and along with Ahsoka is a character who deserves their own show, whether together or apart. Season 2 of The Mandalorian has gotten off to a good start, but one thing it is missing is some comic relief and a funny catchphrase. In Season 1, this was provided by Nick Nolte's Queel. Queel was a wise, caring, and headstrong character who ultimately was gone all too soon after his death protecting Baby Yoda. He was one of Din's most trusted allies, and he had an interesting backstory, being forced to work with the Empire as an Imperial slave. As an Ugnaught, he's known as a gifted and hardworking laborer, but Ugnaughts aren't addressed much in live action and are underutilized. But if Disney were to follow Queel's life as an Imperial slave, they could dive deeper into the horrors of the Empire and horrors of war with perhaps a little more tact than Last Jedi. Alternatively, if Queel and IG-11 had made it out of Season 1 alive, they would have made for a perfect buddy show. Opportunity missed.
I have spoken.
Back to more of the action hero types. Another one of Din's allies came in the form of former shock trooper Cara Dune. Cara was a powerful and dangerous ally due to her training, and an angle that Disney could take is to explore her life as a member of the specialized infantry in a grittier war-focused show. Alternatively, at the end of Season 1, she agreed to stay on Navarro and work for Mando's former employer, Greef Karga, and a show could focus on her life as a bounty hunter, traversing the galaxy picking up contracts. She is more relatable and has more heroic traits than Boba, and a spin-off would be a great opportunity to dive further into her character. Also, as a former MMA fighter, actor Gina Carano can certainly kick some butt out there in the galaxy far, far away. As we just mentioned Greef Karga, let's talk about him, shall we? Karga's role as Din's former employer and mercenary wrangler gives Disney plenty of opportunities to work some interesting stories around him, either in the past or present. While he was arguably one of the antagonists in the early stages of Season 1, the character goes through a redemptive arc similar to Lando in the original saga, and again, could focus on the mercenary bounty hunter angle, but could be more of a relatable character than Boba. Plus, I want some more smooth Carl Weathers charm because we all need that in our lives.
What about you, Mando?
Another badass we got to see in The Mandalorian, although it was all too fleeting, is Fenik Shand, played by Mulan and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. actor Ming-Na Wen. Shand was a force to be reckoned with and an extremely underutilized and underappreciated character, and seemingly met her untimely death, but her death wasn't conclusive, and I mean, if Boba can make a return, why not Shand? Although admittedly, she does share some of the issues that Boba has. She doesn't have a ton of redeeming qualities, but she is a character that had too little screen time, and it would be great to see her back again. Okay, I'm about to sound really hypocritical here, because this next bunch have very little redemptive qualities, but one thing I would personally love to see is a show based around the prisoner crew in Chapter 6, which included Mayfield, Shion, Zero, and Berg. The team were hilariously dysfunctional, played by a killer cast, and were super entertaining to watch. But what makes them work is that they allow Disney to do something so different, go down a Suicide Squad style path. Following these bunch of rogues working on a number of heists across the galaxy would be so reminiscent of the DC property, and would be a refreshing route for the Star Wars franchise to go down. Let's get it done, Disney! Just as we could all use more Carl Weathers and Queel, we could also use more IG-11. IG-11, played by the always hilarious pineapple romper wearing Taika Waititi, like Queel, met his untimely death protecting the child at the end of Season 1. We saw the droid turning from a relentless killing machine to a kind and caring protector, and it was interesting to see that even a droid can have great character progression. But just because we need more IG-11 in our lives, does not mean that he should get his own spin-off show. One of the main criticisms about Din is that he is harder to connect with as we rarely see his face, and who only really speaks through exposition. Arguably, having a droid as a lead would take on these problems and more, and despite Waititi's charm, watching a droid endlessly chop down his victims could get tedious after a while. This is, of course, assuming a story would focus on IG-11 as a bounty hunter. What could have worked, as we mentioned earlier, is a joint story with Queel, but as they sadly both met their demise, that seems unlikely, and I doubt too many interesting things happened between them during their time off-screen in Season 1. Another who arguably shouldn't get their own spin-off is Peli Motto, played by the amazing Amy Sedaris. Motto has been a great source of comic relief, and her interactions with the child have been hilarious.
Looks like it remembers me. How much do you want for it? Just kidding, but not really.
But that doesn't mean there's enough substance there to hold her own show, and as much as I love the character and Sedaris, she's better served on the side rather than the main dish. Since his days as Gus Fring on Breaking Bad, Esposito has been seen as the perfect villain. Authoritative, intimidating, but wonderfully nuanced, and his inclusion in the Star Wars world was a welcome one. However, despite the fact that we would like to know how he came into contact with the Darksaber, he's another one who is best served as a side character as opposed to the lead, especially as he would also have, like, no redeeming qualities. But if an Ahsoka or Bo-Katan show does get made, then we will certainly need to see some more Moff. Finally, the one character who, at least in my humble opinion, should emphatically not get their own spin-off show is, and I can't believe I'm saying this, the child, also known as Baby Yoda. Now, this may seem counterintuitive, especially seeing as how much I love him. I mean, just look at him. I just want to eat him up. Okay, compose yourself. Okay. But just because we love him doesn't mean that he should have his own show, as you can have too much of a good thing. While I'm not suggesting Disney are even contemplating a child spin-off show, they could be tempted due to the popularity of the character, but let's face it, The Mandalorian at this point is basically the child show featuring Mando, and to be honest, I'm fine with that. The show is certainly going to explore the character's roots, and any other appearances of him would just be overkill. So despite how much I love him, and despite the fact he might be my Disney Plus avatar, I believe the child story should only be told within the Mandalorian series. I have spoken.
I have spoken.
What did you make of this list? Which Mandalorian character would you like to see get their own show? Or do you think that Boba is the most deserving? Let us know in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to the channel today for everything Mandalorian. See ya.